Before I start, this is not a There is no God video. You are free to believe whatever you want. I am an atheist, but don't care, really. Believe in your own way, be a good person by yourself. You really don't need churches or preachers. This video is to show how your organized religion is nothing else but a scam to get rich of your donated money. While frankly it doesn't get you anything else in return other than hot air coming from the mouths of its preachers. Most likely the first human who invented the first god was some smart tribal guy who saw that it was a very effective way to protect himself from bodily harm by the stronger ones, if he made them, and the less smart members of his tribe believe he had a very strong friend living across the mountains. So, don't mess with me or I call my strong friend to get you. A friend so strong that he could make the mountains rumble by stamping his feet on the ground. Others would not dare to attack him fearing the revenge of such a powerful friend, and even though no one ever saw this friend it was better to be safe than sorry. It probably did not take long for this smart guy to discover that his fellow tribesmen were easily led to believe that this thunder ally would make them to nearly invincible in battle with rivaling tribes and could even conquer these tribes. The smart guy was well aware that in reality he was not safe at all, so he turned to the strongest one around, usually the tribe leader, and made him believe that he was favored by the mighty thunder friend across the mountains. As history progressed, the tribal leaders became the kings of the later times. The smart guys became the holy men, and the priests. Of course the strong friend story was revised when people could cross the mountains, and were likely to find nothing there. As time passed, the powerful friends moved to a place where no man could travel. Places like the deepest sea, or the unreachable top of the highest mountains, and finally in the sky above even the highest flying birds. Religion became the most powerful way of making people compliant, and making its leaders rich beyond imagination. Around the year 300, the Roman Empire noticed that its culture of countless god families was not working anymore if they wanted to maintain power over Europe. In the early 4th century, Roman Emperor Constantine the Great started a change when he decided to go for a new approach that already seemed to work in the Eastern territories. In short, he threw out the old Roman and Greek god families, and with that their immensely complex mythical family stories. Constantine simplified things by adopting the one single god of the Jewish culture, combined with folklore about a prophet who claimed to be the son of this Jewish god. This was a wise decision because in this way, he would not cross the Jews, who Constantine saw as a nuisance and wished he could get rid of. Later he realized he could use the Jews as scapegoats, the people to point at, when the followers of his new religion showed malcontent. Probably was this the time that antisemitism was born. Emperor Emperor Constantine, appointed a group of the smart guys, like you will find in any era. He gave them the task of creating this new religious system, of a father, a son and of course a mother, who was chosen to bear this Son of God, Jesus the Christ. The term Christ isn't even correct, but it didn't bother them, it sounded good. Christ means the Anointed One, and indicates that Jesus' followers believed him to be the anointed son of King David, whom some Jews expected to restore the fortunes of Israel. These smart guys of course, became the Council of Nicaea, and they were well aware, creating a whole religion from scratch would cost decades, unless they first joined together old chronicles with scriptures, mostly taken from the Jewish Torah. And a show of hands was used which scriptures were suitable and which not in the first Bible. Also, there is nothing holy about that name. Derived from Greek, ta biblia, meaning, the books. The plural of, biblion, meaning, scroll, or later, book. Following that, they combined it with a new story of the prophet, Jesus Son of God, in the one book that would be the guideline of the new Roman religion Christianity in all future. This compromise was created in much shorter time, and there were bound to be errors in the Bible, because there wasn't enough time to cross-reference the books that were included. Taking the fact that no one could read anyway, and the sermons would be given in Latin, these errors would not show for another millennium. When you look at it closer, the Roman Catholic Church is by definition a pyramid scheme. And it is the oldest in human history because, against all logical odds, it is still running. A pyramid scheme is a fraudulent system of making money, based on recruiting an ever-increasing number of investors. The initial promoters recruit investors, who in turn recruit more investors, and so on. The scheme is called a pyramid because at each level, the number of investors increases. The small group of initial promoters at the top require a large base of later investors to support the scheme by providing profits to the earlier investors. To show how religion is a pyramid scheme, and therefore a scam, we only need to replace some terminology. Let's do this. The religious pyramid scheme, like the first one, is a system of making money based on recruiting an ever-increasing number of followers. At the top of the pyramid are the initiators of the scheme, the Roman Catholic Church. The small group, led by the Pope, required a large base of later followers and so on. They are to support the system by providing, quote, unquote, donations to the higher-ups in the church. Normally, a pyramid scheme cannot work because the number of needed supporters will soon exceed the number of people in the world. However, this scheme leveled of at step 9, it can support itself, because people die, and new ones are born. It has become a slow process, but over 1,700 years of running, the top of the pyramid has become the richest in history. The total wealth is incalculable. I doubt if anyone even can put a number on it, including the Vatican itself. In the USA, the greed of preachers is even bigger. They want to be on top of the pyramid, and herefore they often create their own cult, or denomination as they like to call it. It usually is some already existing denomination spin-off, and they use far more aggressive tactics to get your money in their bank account. And they don't use the God is love way, they use a scam like, God hates this, God hates so many things. This is not new. Throughout history there are always some group that people didn't like, Jews, other races, other Christian denominations. But nothing they can preach more hate about is homosexuality. And everything that falls under that, very wide, umbrella. You know what I mean. I hope I don't need to explain that. These preachers feed the already existing hate and exploit that. That is the core of a scam, make people buy into a bad product, that isn't only bad, but totally imaginary. Fear of God and Satan is very profitable, and that is what these scamming preachers need to finance their exorbitant expensive lifestyle. Let me give you some examples. Ted Haggard, Colorado megachurch founder. Ted Haggard's world was rocked in 2006 when a gay prostitute came forward claiming he'd had an affair with a seemingly straight-laced, married father of 4. Haggard was eventually forced to step aside to let his wife become pastor. The family now appears on reality television, like Wife Swap, on which he and Gary Busey's wives swapped lives. Joel Osteen. Osteen says that he aims to focus more on the goodness of God and on living an obedient life rather than on sin. He says that he tries to teach biblical principles in a simple way, emphasizing the power of love and a positive attitude. Sometimes his teachings are characterized as prosperity gospel. He preaches the simple way, while he lives with his family in a $10.5 million home. Billy Graham. When the Nixon tapes were finally revealed, Reverend Billy Graham found himself at the center of controversy. On one of the tapes, he was heard making comments about the Jewish stranglehold on the media and conferring with the president on how to end it. Marcus Lamb. In 2010, famous televangelist Marcus Lamb went on live television and admitted to having an affair in his youth, while married to his wife. Of course, despite his indiscretions, his church gathered around him and pledged to hold him accountable in the future. Well, Marcus Lamb was also an anti-vaccine preacher, and died on the 30th of November, 2021, of COVID-19. Talk about poetic justice, right? Jimmy Swaggart. In 1988, famed television evangelist Jimmy Swaggart made a shocking, on-camera confession. He admitted to moral indiscretions and incidents of moral failure, as crocodile tears streamed down his face on live television, and asked his followers and family for forgiveness before ultimately stepping down from his post. That were skimmers and liars. Now we get to the scammers. Number 1 is Creflo Dollar. In 2015, Creflo Dollar asked his congregation to donate $300 each to his fundraiser. For what, you ask? A $65 million private Gulfstream jet, so that he could travel safely and in comfort. Of course, to spread the word of the gospel. What's in a name, right? Here we have Jim Bakker. 1988 was a bad year for pastors. The same year, it came out that Jim Bakker, founder of Praise the Lord, PTL, Ministries, had had an affair with a former church secretary. Additionally, he was indicted on federal charges of mail-in wire fraud and conspiracy to defraud the public. Not a great year for Jim Bakker. The biggest fraud scammer and thief was Peter Popoff. Peter Popoff was one of the bolder frauds in televangelist history. He claimed to be able to diagnose and cure any of his churchgoers' hidden diseases just by asking the heavens for help. He was later revealed by James Randi to be wearing a wire, through which his wife would feed him the information. After a few years of selling bottled magic water on late-night infomercials, he was back, and his public fell for it again. I am not sure what he is doing now. I hope he is doing time. I also have some perverts, like this creature, Andy Savage. Pastor Andy Savage made headlines early this year when he admitted to sexually assaulting a woman in 1998. The headlines were because he received a standing ovation from his congregation for his confession, not because justice was served. People just want to believe. Eddie Long. In 2010, several young boys came forward and accused their church bishop, Eddie Long, of sexual abuse. Despite the accusations, Long remained a respected member of his parish until his death from cancer in 2017. Still worth $5 million on the statistic websites. But there is nothing about him being no longer alive. Is it me? Or is this just weird? And this one will come as no surprise, Roman Catholic Cardinal Bernard Law. He is not actually one of the American scam preachers, but I have put him in, just because he's disgusting. Bernard Law is possibly the most infamous bad priest in the 1990s. The Spotlight team from the Boston Globe exposed Law for failing to remove sexually abusive priests from his congregation and for covering up the abuses for years. Protecting sexual child abusers, I wonder where this creep ended up, since he is no longer alive. With that I mean, in which of the two afterlife places? But we aren't there yet. I saved the religious insanity for last. Kenneth Copeland. What can I say? He is a Texas-based prosperity gospel preacher. He once defended his ownership of 3 private jets with his statement. Commercial flights would require him to get in a long tube with a bunch of demons. Yes. He is that, utterly insane. Perhaps these demons are out to get him? He also told viewers of his Victory channel that coronavirus was a weak strain of the flu, and that fearing the pandemic was a sin. Copeland is just dangerous. He has political influence and I don't know where to start when it comes to his crazy recommendations. Kenneth Copeland keeps encouraging his listeners and followers keep the donations rolling into their churches. I guess he wants to become billionaire? And here is another one. Pat Robertson. He is a televangelist who stated that Russian President Vladimir Putin was compelled by God. Yes, you hear that correct. Putin was compelled by God in his decision to invade Ukraine, suggesting that Russia's attacks are a precursor to an end-of-times battle in Israel. I cannot decide who is more insane, Copeland or Robertson. They share one thing: their insanity made them mega rich from the donations they both scammed from their brainwashed followers. If you think this only happens in large churches, think again. As some of you know, I am also on Twitter, mainly to annoy flirts, conspiracy theorists, that kind of stuff. Sometimes I pick on religious wackos, and then I found this man calling himself Pastor Alex. When I hovered over his profile I noticed this line: special prayer, only $100, DM me for details. I can do exactly the same with the exact same result. Absolutely nothing will happen. I won't do it, because I am not a scammer. Prayers are totally useless, like believing in astrology. But both are used to scam people out of their money. I follow this bugger Alex on Twitter, and perhaps I can collect some stuff on him that I can put in a video. I already tweeted him out as a scammer, now just wait. The last person I want to mention is probably the worst you can find. Dr. Kent Hovind. He calls himself doctor because he got a PhD from an online diploma mill. But I am not addressing his butt here because they would cost me months to make. Instead of that, I will show you the intro of the excellent documentary by McKinnon Mitchell. This one, you really have to watch. I will link this video together with a Kent Hovind video by Paulogia in the end screen. Kent Hovind represents everything bad in religion. And with that, we come at the end of this video. I hope you will join me with my next one.
Hello, my name's Kent Hovind. Good afternoon, Kent Hovind here. Hello folks, Kent Hovind here.
Good evening folks, Kent Hovind here and the crew at Dinosaur Adventureland. Good evening folks, Kent Hovind here and the crew at Dinosaur Adventureland in Lenox, Alabama. Good evening folks, Kent Hovind here and the crew at Dinosaur Adventureland in lovely Lenox, Alabama. Hovind here and the crew at Dinosaur Adventureland in lovely Lenox, Alabama. We're the folks who believe the Bible is literally true and scientifically accurate. God made everything in 6 days, like he said. Dinosaurs lived with man. They did not live millions of years ago. There is no geologic column. There is no fossil record. You've been lied to. We're here to help straighten that out. We think evolution is the dumbest and most dangerous religion in the history of the world. It's a mental illness. When a grown man dreams, he's related to a worm, a fern, and a frog, which all came from a dot, which came from a dot of nothing exploding. It's time to get him some serious help. Fast. Some of them are educated way beyond their intelligence, and they don't catch on. I've been taught something that's stupid.